1916, Kansas. The sun had barely risen, casting a warm golden hue across the endless wheat fields. Jeremiah Holt, a young man of 22, guided his dusty wagon through a narrow dirt path toward the Stanton Farmstead. He had left his small Wichita home at dawn, eager to find work and send money back to his ailing mother. From a distance, the farm looked productive, almost idyllic, with rows of wheat swaying gently in the breeze. But as Jeremiah approached, he noticed a strange emptiness. The farmhouse was quiet, with no chickens clucking or smoke rising from the chimney. A heavy silence hung over the fields. He shrugged uneasily. Maybe everyone's still asleep, he muttered, trying to shake the feeling of foreboding that crawled up his spine. Jeremiah was greeted by Mr. Stanton, the farm's owner. The man was tall and thin, with sunken cheeks and eyes that seemed to hold secrets older than time itself. "You're here to work, I presume?" Stanton asked, voice low and deliberate. Jeremiah nodded, holding out a calloused hand. Stanton did not shake it. He merely gestured for Jeremiah to follow. Inside the farmhouse, only one other worker was present, Walter, an older man with a lined face and cautious eyes. He offered Jeremiah a nod, but no words. As they walked toward the wheat, Jeremiah realized how unusually quiet the farm was. Not a bird sang, not a dog barked, and even the wind seemed subdued. It was a silence that pressed against his chest, making it hard to breathe. By the third day, the farm remained oddly empty. Jeremiah expected other workers to arrive. Farm hands usually numbered a dozen or more at harvest time, but there was no one. Concerned, he asked Walter about it. They don't stay long," the older man said, his voice barely audible. He avoided Jeremiah's gaze, eyes fixed on the golden sea of wheat. Jeremiah forced a nervous laugh. "It's just hard work, right? People probably find easier jobs." Walter said nothing. As Jeremiah worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that the fields were watching him. Each stalk seemed taller, denser, almost sentient. By nightfall, he found himself glancing over his shoulder repeatedly, but no one was ever there. The evening brought a peculiar chill. Jeremiah stood in the middle of the field, scythe in hand, as the sun dipped below the horizon. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, bending over the wheat like ghostly fingers. He heard the faintest rustle behind him, footsteps on the soft earth. "Walter?" he called. Silence. Back at the farmhouse, Stanton stood motionless at the window, eyes fixed on the horizon. "You hear them?" Stanton asked softly. "Who?" Jeremiah whispered, puzzled. "The wheat. The harvest." "It listens," Stanton murmured, and for a moment Jeremiah thought he imagined it. But the weight of Stanton's gaze made the hairs on the back of his neck rise. Sleep did not come easily. Jeremiah lay in a small, narrow bed in the farmhouse, listening. Soft whispers seemed to float through the air. Floorboards creaked, and outside, a low, unidentifiable hum vibrated through the walls. In the darkness, he saw fleeting shadows moving among the wheat, pale, almost translucent forms bending and swaying as if performing some ritual. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. Nothing. By morning, Walter was gone. The bed beside Jeremiah was empty, and no footprints led away from the farmhouse. A sense of dread settled over him. Whatever haunted this farm, it was patient and hungry. Jeremiah stepped out into the fields, and the wheat seemed alive. The golden stalks bent in waves, brushing against his legs. The usual bird song was absent. Even the wind seemed hesitant. As he worked, he noticed footprints among the wheat that did not belong to him. They led into the stalks, but never returned. Panic prickled his skin. "Where did Walter go?" he whispered aloud, heart hammering. The wheat remained motionless, except for the whispering rustle of the stalks. Jeremiah felt watched, the eyes of the field pressing in on him. For the first time, he understood that this farm did not follow the ordinary rules of nature. While harvesting near the old scarecrow, Jeremiah discovered a note pinned with a rusty nail. The paper was yellowed, edges frayed. "Do not trust the harvest. It takes them." A shiver ran down his spine. The note's author had written in haste, almost fearfully. Jeremiah recalled the strange glances of Walter and the ominous quiet of Stanton. A wave of fear struck him, but the thought of earning money and feeding his mother kept him rooted to the field. Night fell, and the wheat seemed to close in around him. Jeremiah peeked out the window and froze. Shadowy figures moved through the stalks. One figure raised a hand pointing toward the farmhouse, then vanished into the darkness. Rushing to the barn, Jeremiah discovered Stanton missing. The farm was silent, the kind of silence that felt deliberate, almost alive. Jeremiah realized with horror that the disappearance was not selective. Anyone could vanish, and the fields would swallow them whole. Jeremiah tried to leave the farm, but the dirt road he had arrived on had vanished beneath a sea of golden wheat. Each step felt heavier, as though the earth itself resisted him. Exhaustion overtook him, but he pressed on, running through dense stalks that seemed to twist and shift with the wind. Shadows flitted at the edge of his vision, figures working silently, bending and reaping, yet their faces were empty, vacant. Jeremiah understood that he was being tested, trapped in a place where fear, courage, and survival intertwined with something ancient and unyielding. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the wheat. A woman, clothed in tattered garments that glimmered faintly in the moonlight. Her eyes were kind, yet filled with sorrow. "They took them, but you can leave if you choose," she whispered. Jeremiah froze. Who are you?" he asked, voice trembling. "I was like you long ago. The harvest. It keeps us," she replied. Before he could speak again, she melted into the stalks, leaving only a lingering scent of wildflowers and something faintly metallic. Jeremiah knew then that the Stanton Farmstead was no ordinary farm. The harvest had a will of its own, and the silence that enveloped it hid a secret older than any living soul. Jeremiah tried to sleep, but the farmhouse offered no refuge. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wheat outside, twisted into visions that tormented him. In his dreams, ghostly figures moved silently through the golden fields, bending over invisible crops, their faces pale and empty-eyed. He saw Walter, Stanton, and dozens of others, all silent, performing endless work. Their eyes, once alive, now glimmered with a hollow obedience. When he awoke, sweat soaked his clothes, and the room was still. The silence had returned, heavier than before. He realized that the harvest was not just physical, it claimed something deeper, the soul. Determined to understand the farm's secrets, Jeremiah explored the barn at dawn. He discovered a hidden cavity beneath loose floorboards. Inside were personal belongings of vanished workers, worn hats, letters, a child's toy, tools long rusted. On the walls were faint etchings. "The harvest takes care of us, if you join willingly." Jeremiah ran his fingers across the carvings, a shiver running down his spine. The farm wasn't killing the workers, it was transforming them. They existed somewhere between life and the wheat, bound to the field eternally. Fear and fascination warred inside him. Stanton reappeared silently at the barn's doorway. His gaunt eyes seemed older than the earth itself. "You can stay," Stanton said softly, "and never worry again. Or you can leave, but you'll never return." Jeremiah's mind raced. To stay promised safety, comfort, and endless labor, but at the cost of freedom. To leave meant uncertainty, but the possibility of life beyond the golden prison. His heart ached. The decision would define him, but the farm demanded more than courage. It demanded understanding. Jeremiah spent the day studying the wheat. Patterns emerged, paths less dense, areas where stalks bent strangely, almost forming signs. That night, he planned his escape. Moonlight streamed across the fields, illuminating the paths like a guide. He listened to the whispers, deciphering their rhythm. Every step forward was perilous. The wheat seemed to shift, almost alive, trying to turn him back. But determination burned in him. Love for family, hope for freedom, and a desire to survive drove him onward. As Jeremiah moved through the stalks, shadowy hands emerged, reaching for him. He stumbled, fell, and rose again, heart pounding. The harvest resisted him at every turn, twisting the paths, bending the wheat to trap him. But Jeremiah pressed on, fueled by memories of his mother and dreams of life outside the farm. Each step required courage, not just against the supernatural, but against the doubt and fear that threatened to consume him. He realized the farm was testing not only his will, but his heart. Deep within the golden expanse, Jeremiah stumbled upon a circular clearing. The stalks glowed faintly, and within the circle hovered the spectral forms of the workers. Some moved mechanically, but others turned to him, faces filled with silent pleading. He understood that the harvest did not destroy, they preserved. The workers were alive in a different form, bound eternally to the land. He approached, hands shaking, feeling a connection he could not explain. Compassion and empathy stirred within him. He would not run blindly. He would prove he understood. Jeremiah fell to his knees, tears mixing with dirt. "I will work, but only to return home," he whispered. "Let me see my family again." The spectral figures turned toward him, their forms shimmering like heat on the horizon. The wind shifted, carrying a whisper that seemed to come from the wheat itself. Freedom is earned through courage and compassion. For the first time, Jeremiah realized that survival alone would not save him. He needed to prove kindness, understanding, and selflessness to be released from the harvest's grip. Jeremiah began helping the spectral workers, not for reward, but to demonstrate his cooperation and compassion. Together, they organized the harvest, moving efficiently yet silently through the golden fields. As he worked, the wheat parted, revealing faint trails beyond the farm. The path to freedom glimmered in the early dawn. The harvest no longer seemed menacing. It seemed aware, watching, waiting for the right heart to guide it. When dawn broke fully, Jeremiah stepped onto the revealed path. Behind him, the Stanton Farmstead shimmered like a mirage, golden and silent. Stanton appeared at the field's edge, nodding solemnly, eyes hinting at pride and sorrow simultaneously. Jeremiah did not look back again. Every step forward was weighted with gratitude and awe. He had survived the unthinkable, not through force, but through understanding, courage, and empathy. The golden wheat waves whispered farewell, as if blessing him for embracing the lesson the farm had guarded for centuries. Years later, Jeremiah told the tale to his children beside a crackling fireplace. He spoke not only of fear and mystery, but of the lessons hidden in the wheat, respect for the land, courage in the unknown, and the power of selflessness. The Stanton Farmstead remained a legend, its golden fields empty in 1916, yet alive in whispers and imagination. Jeremiah's story spread among locals, a cautionary tale with a deeper truth. Sometimes the greatest harvest isn't wheat, it's wisdom, heart, and humanity. Moral. True courage is not just surviving fear, but understanding and helping the world, even when it tests your limits. The silence of the harvest teaches that generosity and empathy can free a soul more profoundly than any escape ever could.